Welcome everybody. Greg from Greg's Tutoring NYC here. How y'all doing? So today we're going to go over some of the gridding questions for the SHSAT from the 2024 handbook. It's the current one. All right. So before we do that, let's talk about what a gridin is first of all. So let me load that here. If we go to page, I have written down here at 26 of the current handbook. It has a little description of what the gridins are. I'm not going to talk about them in the video. I'm just going to send you to this page 26. It shows you how they work. There's 3 or 4 pages of descriptions here. Basically, the first column is a minus sign if your answer has a negative in it. And otherwise, if you notice, you're preferring to left justify answers. And they give an example here like D and E where they're both 0.78 versus 0.78. They're both allowed. Okay. And then there's some rules here where you shouldn't do certain things. And then they give a little table down here of some rules. I implore you guys to read that, especially towards the week before. You don't want to solve all the math questions correctly and then get all the answers wrong because you gridded in incorrectly, okay? Also, what I'd like you to point you to, there's a gridin section of every DOE handbook as well. On this last one, the 23-24 workbook, it's on page 267. All right, so there's a sample gridin sheet they give you here. Wait, I went to the wrong page. Anyway, that's a sample gridin sheet anyway. Well, they give some extra sample questions here. So these are strictly gridins. So they give something like a dozen of these or something. There's 10 there. Okay. And what I really want you to do is less that you should do these sample questions. You should definitely do them. But they show you gridin solutions for them. So you actually know how to do the gridins. Okay. And if you notice, just as kind of a sidebar comment, if this was 2.31, that's it. And even if you had an answer like 0.123, that's the most digits you're going to get because this first column here is going to be minus sign. So usually that's the extent of the precision that you need to do on the SHSAT. So if you're doing division, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Your way, you don't need to compute those last few digits there, all right? Because it's not going to fit in your gridin. Okay, and usually when you get something like that, the questions say round to the nearest something. If it doesn't say that, most likely you're probably getting the wrong answer. All right. So anyway, that's the kind of heads up here about some of that. So let's go actually to the gridins on this exam. Let me go to that page for 1 second. So I'm going to start from the Form A exam. And let me load that up on the screen. All right, so that's also, many of you never get to read the instructions on the exam. Read this before a test day, and read this little synopsis here, which is basically a summary of the pages I just showed you that tells you how to do your gridins. And then, of course, read this directions here again. So get familiar with the exam. The instructions are not going to change on test day. Years ago, I used to be like, what if they change it? No, they're not going to change it. That's why they gave the DOE handbook. If they changed any instructions, you would know about it. Okay? All right, so we're going to start question number 58. Okay, Miss Lee opened a retirement account with a deposit of $2,500. The account earns 4% simple interest. That's all the SHSAT has. It doesn't have compound interest. Okay, how many years will it take her to earn $500 on her $2,500 deposit? So it mentions that twice. That's what she has. All right. So basically, what we need to do is figure out the interest per year. Okay. So if you do 2,500 times 4%. Okay, these 2 zeros cancel that. All right, which means we get $100. Okay. So then if she has $500, all we're going to do is divide 500 by 100 and get 5. That's all they're looking for here. And of course, we can do in this reverse. This is simple enough. that we kind of really don't care. All right, so the general formula is the simple interest is equal to the principal times the interest rate, so to speak, times the time. Okay, so that's our general formula there. The principal is the deposit in this case. That would be the 2,500. The rate is going to be the 4%, so times 4%. And the time in this case was going to be, ends up being 5, but we're basically solving for T. So it turns out to simple interest, they told us she earns $500. So that's what we're solving, right? That's what I did above here. And that's how I got that out. So that's the formula. That's what you kind of should know. We're not using compound interest where it grows. It's just straight up interest. Compound interest is not on the SHSAT. It's only simple interest. All right, so that one was 5. Okay, the next example is terribly easy, and that's why it's terribly hard. The number of students who get this wrong is mind-blowing. And the basic issue is that there's that minus, and that minus. And you really need to know the rules. A lot of you guys know PEMDAS. PEMDAS is broken in certain ways, but many of you don't even know the basics of it, and you need to go and review that, which is the order of operations, right? So this is arithmetic processing, okay? And you guys should know these different rules. And you should also know that if I have something like this bar minus 2 bar, that means the absolute value of minus 2, and that's equal to 2. We get a positive out of absolute value. Absolute value is a positive number, all right? And one of the problems with PEMDAS is it doesn't tell us where absolute value goes. So to kind of short circuit this, absolute value works at the same level that parentheses do, all right? So if you kind of figure out each thing here. So the minus 3 here, the absolute value of minus 3 becomes positive 3. Okay? Minus 2 to the third is minus 2, right? What it means is it's minus 2 times minus 2 times minus 2. So that's minus 2 times minus 2 is 4, positive, times minus 2 is minus 8. Okay? And then we're just left with kind of the PEMDAS-y things at this point. So PEMDAS tells us to do all the parenthesized things first. So we kind of did that. And again, the absolute value kind of falls into that. Then it tells us to do multiplication division next. So that's going to be this guy here and that guy there as little groups. All right. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. So 9 divided by 3, if we combine that, that's just 3. All right, so and the 6 drops down, so does the minus sign. So 6 minus 3. And then we have minus 8 times 1.5. That's the same as 3 halves if we want to think of it that way. Okay, which gives you minus 24 halves or minus 12. Well, you could just do 8 times 1 is 8, and 8 times a half is 4. That's 12. So we can get the minus 12 that way as well. All right. And that's what we need to end up solving. So we end up getting 6 minus 3 minus 12. That was a 2. So that's 6 minus 15. Okay. And that's equal to minus 9. So that's our answer there, minus 9. Okay. They're not really asking you to do much else there. These are tricky. I can say the majority of students are going to get this question wrong. So even though this is an exam that you need to pace out, you need to actually do this question slowly to make sure you got each little step, not just the absolute value and the division versus the multiplication, but the addition versus the subtraction. And there's 3 minus signs again there, and they kill this. They just kill you on this kind of thing. All right. So you need to just make sure, and these are hard to double check, right? What do you do with the minus 9? You can't feed it back into anything. All right, so you just need to know your rules, your order of operation rules there. All right, so that's all they're asking you to do there, and just make sure you got all that right. Okay, this also is going to push PEMDAS, right? If we think about the underlying concepts of some of these under here, and really the math term is order of operations. PEMDAS is just a silly thing people come up with, right? Please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Technically, that has nothing to do with math. And like I said, PEMDAS is broken in different ways. And in other countries, you learn other stuff like BODMAS, right? If anybody wants to Google that, it's basically the same rules, but for not in the North American situation. So we have a similar problem here. There's a minus sign here, and this here is a distributive property. We have A times B plus C. All right, and that kind of blows everybody's minds how to do that. So let's expand the distributive property first, because 7x is 7x, 3 is 3, and the 13 is 13. So the only thing we have to do is expand out the distribution. So there's a couple ways to do it. I like to keep the -2 intact. So it's -2 times 2x. So that gives me -4x. Okay? And this is usually where students make the error, which is most students are going to do +2. But if the -2 is intact as a unit, that really is supposed to be -2. And then the 7x and the 3 just drop down. And of course, the 13 drops down as well. All right, so let me just double check this. I did the right thing. -4x -2. I don't know why I wrote an extra 2 there. So what we want to do usually is just combine like terms on the same side. So I'm going to leave the 13 alone for now, and I'm going to combine like terms on both sides. The 7x minus 4x is 3x, okay? And then the 3 minus the 2 gives me 1. So I have 3x plus 1 is equal to 13. All right, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides at this point, and I get 3x. That cancels, is equal to 12, and then divide both sides by 3. That cancels. This side by 3, and that's equal to 4. X is equal to 4. All right, so what we want to do is let's double check it. Let's see if it's really equal to 13. Let's use blue. So 7 times 4 plus 3 minus 2 times 4 plus 1 is equal to 13. Whoops, I read 15. I should point out that I have dyslexia, actually. So numbers like this is even more torturous for me. Anyway, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So this becomes 9. Then 9 times 2 is 18, but there's a minus sign out of here. So that's minus 18, right? That was an equal sign. And then this is 28. Right? So we have 28 plus 3 minus 18. So 28 plus 3 is, we end up getting 31 minus 18. Okay. And that is equal to 13. Right? We can double check it by adding these two. We get 10 plus 10 is 20, plus the 8 is 28, 29, 30, 31. So it checks out. So our answer is indeed 4. All right? So that's, again, this is a question 60 we can double check. Some of the others we can't. All right, so we're going to just do the 5 grid-ins on this video. I want to do some of the other questions on other videos. All right, so this is geometry. This is find angle X. We can almost see it without looking at the words. They're most likely going to ask us to find what that angle is, and you can almost see the path. Sometimes you can't see the path on these. If you can't see the path, just start filling in anything. You know what that is. 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 Okay, so actually you don't know what that is, but because that's X. I meant that way. But so just start filling in stuff till you can get to be where you need to be. All right, so we didn't look at the question yet, so let's see what the question is. But it seems like we're going to be asked to solve for X. All right, so it's in the figure above. Line L, which is this line here, is perpendicular to line N, which is this guy here. So we have that being proved by this little right angle squarey thing there. All right, so what is the value of X? All right, so it seems to me you should know all your geometry rules of various sorts. There's a bunch of them. One is that the angles in a circle are 360. Whoops, that's not a circle. Okay, the angles in a quadrilateral also 360. The angles in a line is 180. The angle in a triangle is 180. Okay, you should also know your parallel rules, where if I have two parallel lines, there's certain equalities, like this and this are the same, which means that and that are the same, and all four of those are the same, or this angle here inside of here and this angle here, they're going to be 180. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different rules you should know about stuff like that. And involving a triangle, there's a certain rule that comes into play a lot here, that this outside angle here is usually the sum of these two interior angles in there. Okay, and there's a few more rules you should know as well that we'll see, and they come into play. We'll see them, and we can get into some of the multiple choice questions as well. But that's basically the spiel, and that's what they're asking you to do. So you should also know one of the ones I didn't mention above. There's vertical angles. That means this angle here is also guaranteed to be X. Okay, so if in this inside right triangle here, if we call this triangle T1, we know that T1 is a right triangle, so that's 90, right? So if I also know if this is a vertical angle here, this is 35. Okay, so it seems to me that if the sum of the angles in a triangle, like I mentioned above, was 180, if I subtract the 90, which is that guy, and I subtract the 35, which is that guy, all I'm going to be left with is this angle X here, which is the same as that angle there. All right, so if we do that, we're going to get, what do we get at 55? All right, and this is a Gridin. Again, you don't go to the next question, you recalculate it. So if we get rid of some of my clutter here, because I find what a lot of students do is when they do these questions, they often do them in their head, like they wouldn't write out what I just wrote out here. I suggest that you do write it out, because this is where you get introduced errors. Every question counts, and every question counts a lot, because some questions could be worth 4 points and some could be worth 15 or 20 points. So you don't want to just make a thing. And also, that one question might be where you get an offer versus not getting the offer. All right. So we believe this is 35. We believe this is 55, right? 55 plus 35 is 90, plus that 90 is 180. It checks out. And that angle here is the same as that angle. And that's what they're looking for, right? And you live happily ever after. Okay. Now, the next one is pseudo-beastly. This comes up a lot on the SHSAT, where they're basically giving you a bunch of numbers. Usually it's tests. Somebody has gotten a bunch of exams, and it's usually based on averaging. So it says the mean value. So this is also the same word as the average. And in particular, this is the arithmetic average they're asking for. That's usually what you guys learn in your school. So it says the mean value of 8 numbers is 17. So you guys should know the formula for average. Average is equal to the sum of the numbers over the number of numbers, right? So they're telling us that the average of 8 numbers is 17. So we have 17 is equal to, we don't know the sum of the numbers, over 8. Okay? So we can figure out the sum of the numbers by multiplying both sides by 8. That cancels out. We multiply this by 8, and then it's the sum of the numbers is equal to 8 times 17. Okay? So that ends up being 136 is equal to the sum of the numbers. And you can go off on the side and do 17 times 8. Right? 7 times 8 is, we get 6. Carry the 5, we get 136. Right? There's nothing wrong with that. By the way, try to keep your work for a question in the space that they give you. It's usually sufficient. And if you need more scrap paper, you can ask for it. But once you start putting your answers all over the place, especially if you come back to the exam, you do the ELA section next or something, come back to it, it can get all discombobulated and everything. So you want to just keep things where they are and try not to leak over into other questions, even even the neighboring questions. If you can, use the space like I used over here. We're using the top, and at the bottom of the page, there's often some white space. There's a lot of white space on this one, but like the previous page, you also had white space here. So try to use those instead of drawing lines all over and putting little borders, right? You don't want 62 to leak over here and then start drawing all these weird things. Just, they usually give you enough space, and that's a little hint that you guys can work with. All right, so the sum of the numbers is 136. So basically we're only up to here. It's telling us 3 of the numbers are 9, 11, and 20. So it seems to me if we add them up, that's 40. The sum of those numbers is 40. All right, that's 3 of the numbers. And it's saying they're discarded. So basically what we have to do is take that 136, subtract the 40 from it. Okay, and what do we get for that? 94? No, we get 96. So if there was 8 numbers, this is the remaining 5 numbers. It says, what is the mean of the 5 remaining numbers? So doesn't that mean we just have to do 5 into 96? Because they are the remaining numbers. So 5 goes into 9 once. We get, what do we get? 4 left over. 9 goes into 45. So we get 1 left over, and we get 0.2. So that's our answer, 19.2. Okay. And if we want, we can kind of feed this all back in. Now, it's asking us for the mean, but we want to make sure, really what we want to make sure is that 96 is correct. So if you want us to double check, take the 96, add it to the 40 back again, and then see if that divided by 8 is the 17. Whereas basically your double check is to get the 96, add it to the 40, divide that by 8, and make sure is that equal to 17. And if it does, that means working with the 96 here makes sense. And it's asking, what is the mean of the remaining 5 numbers? Once you know 96 is legitimate, then you're good with that, okay? And the 17 doesn't prove you got the right answer. You just want to make sure you're using the right number involved with that, okay? All right, that's the last Gridin, I believe, right? 62. Yeah, the next one's a multiple choice. So I'm going to stop this video here, and then we'll do some more. And the notion of time, I usually have done full review handbooks. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull that off this year because I'm actually starting a week before the exam. And I'll do the best I can. But what I might do is hunt and peck. I definitely wanted to get the Gridins. I'm going to do box plots. And at that point, I'm just going to go rando across the 2 exams. So what I'm probably going to do for the next part here is do the Gridins for the Form B exam. This was the Form A. And then hunt and peck around. And I might get all the questions done that way. If not, I'm just going to get the critical ones. I'm also going to try to at least do the poem. There was a Brooklyn letter or something. A letter from Brooklyn was the poem. And then maybe a passage or 2. It depends. Because I have feedback from my own students of what are the toughest questions and things like that. All right. Peace, y'all. See you on the flip side.